All right, hello everyone. So today we're going to see 5 rules that I call the 5 basics. That are 5 rules that are essential in order to save some time during the TOEIC, but also to be sure to earn some points as well. And it's going to help you save some energy and then some good mood, which is always useful for the TOEIC. So, what are those 5 rules? The first one is the most complex to explain, so we're going to start there. You can read it there. All the rules are there on my screen, so I suggest you screenshot them. I'm going to explain them a bit. I'm going to develop and give you examples, but those are the basic rules. So, how do you have to understand them? The first one, be plus verb in ed or verb in ing. What does that mean? It means that if you have a verb, you have a verb after the verb be, then it's either in its ed form or ing form, which is good news for you, because if you've got a MCQ during your TOEIC, you have a sentence such as I am something 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 a meal, and you've got 4 propositions. You have cook, which is verb base, to cook, which is the infinitive. You have cooked, and then you have which is the ed form, of course, obviously, I hope. And then you've got cooking, the ing form. You know that you can ignore those two. Those two are not the right forms you should pick. So out of the 4, you can already delete 2 of them. So that's good news. And then that begs the question, which form should you choose and how should you choose? One way to do so that I like to suggest is, well, the ed form in English is easily translated with an e in French, whereas, although it's not always beautiful, an ing form in English is easily translated with a en in French, like that. So what would that give in French? Would you say je suis préparé un repas or je suis préparant un repas? Well, the second one, I am cooking, préparant, a meal, is not beautiful in my translation, but you got the idea that you are not the meal that is being prepared. So you can ignore this one as well, and you can move on to the cooking as an example. So ideally, this rule is going to help you actually save some time and simplify the equation, divide it by 2, in order for you to be more efficient. Besides, even outside of a TOEIC, it should help you, correct yourself on a mistake that is very classic for us French speakers. Moving on, you have the second rule. So if the first was quite complex, the second one is a bit simpler. How should you read it? If you have a verb after the verb have, then it's always in its ed form. Always, always, always. So same thing. I'm going to give you an example of that. Well, I'm going to give you a sentence. I have. Let's say you have that sentence during the TOEIC, that MCQ. I have a meal, and then you've got a choice. You've got prepare, so verb base. You've got to prepare, infinitive. You've got prepared, ed form, obviously, or you've got preparing, ing form. Well, there, because it's the have verb, you can ignore these 2, you can ignore that one, and that's it. And how should you translate it to keep on giving on you examples with that? J'ai, I have, present tense, préparé un repas. And that makes sense. So if you're not sure of yourself during the TOEIC or while you are writing or speaking, you can always try that, with a translation, and that's going to show you that you're right. So very quickly, the have verb, there's a verb after, ed form, you don't think, you don't waste your time, you save some energy, and you know you're right. You don't even have to read the full sentence, you know you will be right, which is, in my mind, super comfortable. Moving on to the third rule. The third rule is awesome. For us French speakers, it's an easy way not to lose points whenever you're speaking, whenever you're writing, and especially during the TOEIC. How should you read it? If you have a preposition, if you have a preposition, and there's a verb after, it is always in its ing form. That raises another question. What are the prepositions? All of those words. To start with, I like to say that prepositions are short two-letter words, in, on, at, off, and then moving on. Out, within, without, into, onto, upon. I know I'm forgetting some, but you got the idea. So there's a preposition. You see a preposition during a TOEIC. So let's say something like, I am interested in blah 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 something 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 with you, and then you've got a choice: work, to work, working, or worked. You don't think about it, and you know the right answer will be the ing answer, and that's it. You've again saved some time, some energy, and some good mood, which out of 200 questions during the TOEIC is always useful. Even outside of a TOEIC, besides, when you're speaking, when you're writing, it's an easy way to correct yourself very quickly. So preposition, if there's a verb after, it's in its ing form. The fourth one, it's always good to do a reminder on that one, is that, how should you read it? If you have a modal verb, then after, the verb is in its base form. So if you have a verb after a modal, then it will be in its base form. What does that mean? Well, what are the modals? All of those: can, could, should, would, obviously, which I'm not forgetting, may, must, might, all of those, have to, shall, need to, these two. I'm not sure you're going to have them during the TOEIC, but we never know. So if you've got a verb after all of those, then you know you have to pick the base form. So concretely speaking, what does that mean? You have something like we must, blah, 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 something, 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 order, in order to keep up the pace. And you've got a choice: we must walk, we must to walk, infinitive, we must walked, or we must walking. Well, none of those are going to work. Why? Because it's not the base form of the verb, so it's not the base verbal in French, so you can forget it. Oh, my bad. How do you know? Let me give you a small tip. How do you know what is the base form? There are many ways. For the regular verbs, the simplest way is to think to yourself, it's the verb in its most basic form. So there, work, there's no to in front of it. So there's no mark of the infinitive. There's no ed at the end, so it's neither the past or the past participle. And it's not the ing form as well. Those words are too long for that. The base form for the regular verbs is the verb in its most basic form, in its shortest form. So the shortest word of the list is going to be the right one. For the irregular verbs, on the other hand, well, you have to know them actually. But the good news is, if you don't know a verb during a MCQ, and you know it's not an irregular verb, then you just have to pick work, well, the shortest one, in order to be sure you've got the right answer. So again, you've saved some time, you've saved some good mood, some energy, and you know you're right, even if you don't understand everything. Lastly, the fifth and final rule, how should you read it? You should read it from the right to the left there. So what does I mean by that? How should you read it? Well, you should read if there's a verb before by, then the verb will be in its ed form. Always, always, always. And this is an easy way to simplify the equation of the passive voice in English. So let me give you an example. There you've got two classic sentences. You know, whenever you're speaking of the passive voice in English, those are the classic examples we give. So there you've got by the cat. So you know there, it's an irregular, that eaten is its ed form, or cooked there, ed, because there's a by. So same thing, if you had a MCQ, the mouse will be something by the cat. Whenever you're reading such MCQ there in English, during the TOEIC, as an example, you stop thinking and you look up for the verb that is in its ed form. You know you're going to be right. You know you will have a point, and you've saved some time. And again, some good mood. Excellent news. Lastly, two more points, two small details to add. If you've been paying attention, you can notice something else there. In order to find the cooked, the ed form, what you'll notice is, yes, there's the by before, but there's also the be there. So the good news is those rules add to each other. So there you could have said, I found that cooked was the right answer because I knew that after the be verb, there's an ed form, or before the preposition by, there's a verb in its ed form. Good news. Not only do the rules add to themselves, but, and this is the last detail, the tense that you're going to use changes nothing to the rules. There, as an example, you've got a future. I've used a lot of present tenses during my other examples, but there you've got a past tense as well. You could have said cooked as an example. That's exactly the same. So there you got it. You've got, so to recap, to sum up, 5 rules. Be, if there's the be verb and there's a verb after, it's either in its ed or ing form. If you have a verb after have, it's always in its ed form. If you have a verb after a preposition, it's always in its ing form. A verb after a modal will be in its base form. And lastly, if there's a verb before the preposition by, then it's going to be in its ed form. Whatever the tense is, past, present, or future, whatever the form, singular, plural, or progressive, ing, and you can add the rules. So as an example, you could write a sentence, I am interested in. So there you've got am. So you've got a verb in ed form, in working with you, as an example. So in working, why do you use the ing form? Because there's an in there, a preposition just before. So that's it. That's it for today. I hope this is going to help you. Actually, the difficulty with those rules is not to use them, is to be able to catch them during a MCQ, during a text. So I can suggest you 2 things. Whenever you're reading a text, try to read a bit slowly and try to find those rules in the text in order to be better at noticing them, better at finding them. I am sure you will never find any exception to those rules because they are perfect, they are always right. So there you got it. Have fun with it and see you soon.